Well, thanks for taking some time out of your day to talk to me today. I have a couple of questions for you, but I was hoping that maybe first you would introduce yourself for our viewers.
Of course. My name is Pepe Solomon, and I am a painter currently residing in Phoenix, Arizona. I create work that aims to tell stories of young African immigrants in the diaspora, authentic stories, stories that are are not trying to be anything, stories that are tailored to the sitters and the musers themselves.
Yeah. So we've been fortunate enough here at the Tucson Museum of Art to work with Pape off and on since about 2018 when he was in the Arizona Biennial and fresh out of his undergraduate degree at ASU.
A long time
I
ago.
know it's been a long time. But even more excitingly, right at the end of 2020, you donated to the museum a small drawing or mixed media painting. And I want to specifically talk about that piece today and maybe how it fits into what you just mentioned about being a painter of the African diaspora, because I feel like the subject matter is slightly different. Um,
Completely.
so will you tell us about that work on paper that you donated to the museum?
Yes. Um, like you mentioned, it's a small works on paper, drawing, painting, mixed media, I guess. Um, and that drawing came about as a reflection. It's a portrait of Arbery, and when his life was taken, violently taken, um, that put me in a spiral, and I had to think about a lot of things and how I fit into the puzzle of this society. If I were to step out of my house or out of my studio, I'm seen as a young black man. I'm not. I'm not sure. I'm pretty certain that cops don't look at me just from first glance. I'm sure they don't look at me as, oh, he's an African in America. I'm sure that's not the case. Um, so I it was a way for me to put into consideration everything and how everything affects me directly and even indirectly.
So what was it about like Ahmaud Arbery though that made you I guess like that hit that wall for you, right? Because it had been for me at least watching, right? And we're all paying attention to the news, it had been a series of violence on Black bodies.
Right.
And what was it about that moment, that person that kind of hit you the hardest?
I could see myself in him. I mean, that's the most basic way of putting it. Um, I love to run. I used to run a lot before that occurrence, and I used to run at night, sometimes in the mornings, whenever I had the chance to. Um, I would run in my neighborhood, so I mean that perfectly matches, right? And he was like 25, I think, 25, 26-ish. I mean, he was literally almost my age. So, I mean, that could have easily been me. So that really, really hit something in inside of me because, I started reflecting on it was sort of like I was seeing myself getting killed, and that's not a pleasant feeling. So I had to work through those feelings, and the best way I know how is to draw and meditate in that way.
Yeah, and you have told me before, but I know that your art has always been a way to process your feelings or things that you're seeing, right? For
Right.
example, perhaps those early drawings that you were doing when you were in the refugee camp were like a documentary process. Could you talk a little bit about those too? Because I do see some connections between those early drawings when you maybe first started to be an artist and how you were processing Ahmaud Arbery's death.
Right. Yeah, I've I've always used drawing as a way for me to figure out things. It's just been easier for me to, in a way, collect information from the outside and just have it sit in my mind and, you know, have myself work through it. And the best way to do that is, just pull out a piece of paper or, stretch a canvas or something and start working. And as I'm painting, or as I'm drawing, I'm thinking. I think art is one of those professions that allow you to think about other things when you're working. And I guess that's beautiful. And I've always done it since I was a child. I mean, as a child, I used to stutter, right? So I didn't have a way to express myself, and I didn't understand things the way other kids did. I mean, I would rather draw something than read something. I mean, I would want to read too, collect information, but I process better when I'm actually alone doing what I'm doing in my own thoughts. And I just did the same thing this time around. And since the Tucson Art Museum, or the Tucson Museum of Art, is one of the first museums that I ever did anything with, I thought it was the right gesture to make that donation.
Yeah, and for us, I feel like it's a huge piece to have, right, in our collection, both as kind of a connection, a continued connection to your work, but also because it tells such an important story, and documents this really kind of palpable moment in time that we're all living through 2020 right now. Um, so yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? Like why a museum? What were you thinking in that end?
Because I want him to be remembered, and I want um, his death and how that occurred to be remembered. I mean, if that were to happen to me, I would want it to be remembered, because I think it was a significant moment. I mean, all these continuous killings of young Black men and even older Black men, or just Black people, Black women, Black people in general, honestly, by police, has been happening for a long time, right? I mean, the only difference is that before, I mean, we didn't have camera phones to record these things, and now we have access to document these things, because I mean, word of mouth, especially when it's coming from people like myself, it's not really trusted, right? I mean, you have to show, and even when you show evidence, is this hugely criticized. Um, so I wanted to, I guess, create a different avenue, um, for his story to be remembered and for him to be remembered as a person. And that's also why I chose a picture where he is smiling, right? Because I wanted the person to be remembered,
Yeah,
and not just everything that happened.
yeah,
But that's very important as well.
yeah. And then that's a great point, right? The picture that you drew is very different than a lot of the images I've seen in the news or even in a Google search looking at him.
Right.
Yeah.
And although it was a hurtful moment, I also wanted um, to present him in the best way possible. Because I think oftentimes what happens is when things like these happen, the media rushes to all the negative things that this person may have done in their lives, right? Um, Ignoring the fact that what someone did before is not a sufficient reason to take away their lives, or to justify one's action of forcefully taking someone's life, right? So I wanted to um, erase that completely from my approach, and just paint or draw the person
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's right, a common thread again through your work. I think you really try to just paint that person, to document that moment.
Exactly. You know, all the other noise doesn't really matter. What matters is the person. And I think that's something that we need to remember, especially in the context of this society.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Well, that is all the questions I have. I wanted this to just be kind of a brief little interview so we had some context for the donation. So thank you for taking the time out to talk to me. Is there anything else you want to say or add?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, the story. I mean, everyone knows the story. I mean, if you don't know the story, then you may want to research and understand what happened. Um, yeah, this was quick. I
Yeah,
was expecting
it
it to
was
be a
fast.
very lengthy conversation, but you
No,
know,
we were
it's
very
just fine to.
focused just on one thing.
Right,
Yeah.
definitely.
All right. Well,
Uh,
thanks so much, Pape.
of course. Thank you.